Hello everybody, welcome back. I'm the Strategy Professor, and today we're going to be doing our tier list for patch 10.16. So as always, if you enjoy the content, please be sure to like and subscribe. It really helps out a ton on the channel. Come by, check out the stream on YouTube every night starting around 11:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We usually go till about 4 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Very friendly, chill community. We'd love to have you. And then we also do fresh tier lists, patch notes, every single patch, and then coaching sessions, topical guides, like best one trick, how to macro, how to micro, champion guides, all sorts of content on the channel, so be sure to check that out. Okay. And be sure to check out the rest of the content as well. I am doing a Witcher 3 playthrough right now, and I also do Total War Warhammer all the time. I'm going to be adding some more single-player games soon. If you'd like to sponsor a single-player game, just email me, let me know what you have in mind. It's just $5 an hour plus the cost of the game, and I can help you crowdfund that if you're interested. So just email me, let me know. Okay, let's go ahead and get in here. So I think the trend is going to continue that I've been talking about over the last few patches, which is the rise of enchanters and AD carries becoming specific top-end AD carries becoming a bit more powerful. And the leading factors that have been growing over time with this are the buffs to Guardian. They did nerf it back down a little bit, but it's still a lot better on ranged champions because of the huge radius. And then the buff to Swiftness boots allows you to reposition a lot in team fights, so you don't have to go mobility boots, and the nerf to mobility boots a few patches ago. So enchanters like Soraka, like Sona, can more comfortably go Swiftness boots and position better in team fights. Tanky junglers are still going to be really strong. Nunu, I still think, is the best jungler at Platinum and lower by a pretty considerable margin. Now, Volibear is getting nerfed on this patch, so we'll see how that turns out. I still think he'll probably be pretty good, and then Kayn is very widespread, and he's really strong as well. So we did see Kha'Zix start to rise up a little bit. So there's Volibear, Nunu, and Kayn. And we did see Kha'Zix start to rise up. He is getting nerfed again on this patch, but he probably will still be pretty good. And Karthus got nerfed on this patch as well. So both of those should fall down at least a little bit. And then Nunu and Kayn are going to continue to rise to prominence. And then you're still seeing a lot of tanky top laners as well. So Shen is actually really getting strong right now. I'm seeing Shen everywhere, and he seems to be very influential. So Shen's still really good. Darius is good. Garen's good. Still seeing like Wukong doing fairly well. Top lane. Volibear's like okay, but he's getting nerfed this patch. Urgot isn't very popular, but he's doing all right. So I think it's still mostly tanky tops that you're seeing. Now they did buff up Fiora a little bit on this patch, and Camille is doing like okay. So you're still seeing mostly tanks top. And that's important that you're seeing tank junglers and tank tops, because that makes enchanters a lot stronger, because the more armor and magic resist somebody has, the more effective plus healing and shielding is on them. If you want to know more about that, I'll have an enchanter itemization video linked at the end of this. But basically, don't forget that shields scale with armor and magic resist. So if you put a 300 shield on somebody and they have 100 armor, it's going to take 600 physical damage to break that shield, for example. So it's a lot better if you're running an enchanter to have tanky people on your team than squishy people, because they're going to have more resistances, and fights extend to go longer, so you can get off more heals and more shields. Because if someone just gets blown up instantly in like a double assassin meta where you have assassin jungler and assassin mid and maybe like a split push or top, if it's a split pick kind of meta, then enchanters have a hard time with that, because they can get picked off rotating through the jungle, but then also your allies can just get blown up instantly if there's too much damage, and then your healing and shielding isn't going to do a lot. So this type of meta that's slowing down a little bit, you're getting more tanks, fights are lasting a little bit longer, people are opting into more 5v5 fights rather than split pushing. Shen's obviously a split pusher, but that all bodes very well for enchanters. Then you just have healing everywhere, so you still have, they haven't nerfed this too much, you still got Conquer, Triumph, Ravenous Hunter, Death's Dance, Blade of the Ruined King, Spirit Visage. A lot of these top-end champs do have quite a lot of healing in their kits as well, and shielding, so they're going to be difficult to kill, and that means fights are going to last longer. Now, if they do take Spirit Visage, that's also extremely good for someone like a Soraka, because that increases your healing by 30% on them. So if it's something like a Red Kayn who's got Spirit Visage, that's going to be really difficult to deal with for the enemy. Okay, jungle pathing is also still really heavily favored towards pathing to the top side because you get a better leash on the bot side with both people, and just kind of the cheese level 2 gank junglers, the Lee Sins, the Xin Zhaos, stuff like that, who have that option aren't as strong, and it just feels like there's a lot more answers to them than there was in the past. There's not as much just like explosive burst damage. Like they've nerfed out the damage on Nautilus and Leona a little bit. Draven, I don't know if he got directly nerfed, but he's not being played as much. So just you're not seeing as much of the level 2 cheese, and so a lot of people are pathing towards top side and just fighting over top scuttle, which means that you typically have the first 4 or 5 minutes to yourself in the bot lane in a 2v2 most of the time. Now that doesn't mean you should just like, completely disrespect the fact that someone could gank you earlier, but it is unlikely that most junglers, especially at gold and lower, are going to gank bot side before 4 minutes. So that gives enchanters more time to get vision down, gives them a bit more time to get a few levels under their belt so they can maybe peel, and it really heavily favors the hard push comps, the Caitlyn's, the Ashes, even Jhin and stuff like that. You can really put the enemy under the tower early, and it's less likely that you're going to get punished for that. Early ADC power, so ADCs are starting to come online and be more impactful in the early game, which favors enchanters as well. So you have Caitlyn, most notably, is super strong right now. Ashe is still going to be pretty strong. Should get nerfed on this patch, but I think she'll still be pretty good. Jhin is rising to prominence a bit more, and then you have Jinx as well, who's a pretty good early game person. Now, Trist also did get buffed several times, or a couple of times on this patch, and I think she will be pretty strong as well, and she does push waves pretty well. So I think early game ADCs and just pushing and threatening plates is going to be really strong, which favors enchanters. You want a ranged champion that can really, just pressure the plates and poke people under tower, right? So you don't, like the Nautilus and the Leonas don't do that very well. They don't work very well with push comps. You want to position the wave, if you're playing Nautilus or Leona, in the middle and just try to freeze them out and zone them off the wave by threatening them with the hard engage. But that's not really where the meta is going right now. I don't think that's what's optimal, so... And there's been direct nerfs to Leona and Nautilus. Nautilus got nerfed on this patch. 15 off of his shield, especially in the early game, is a very big deal, so it's going to be rough. He is getting played everywhere in pro. His win rate in solo queue is okay. It's not that great on this patch. So yeah, that's just kind of where the meta is going right now, and that's why I think Enchantress is going to be really strong. Okay, so let's go ahead and jump in here, talk about some of these top-level picks. I still think Soraka is going to be number 1 at Platinum and lower. She has several things going for her. If we have Soraka pulled up here. First of all, she does push really well. Her spells are very cheap. You can spam it to harass, but you can also just hit the backline. It doesn't do any reduced damage to minions. And it's on a low cooldown, so you're not going to get punished for using this on the backline. Obviously, the best thing you can do is if they're standing in the minions on the backline, if you can hit them and the minions, that's good. But your Q is just such a powerhouse in the laning phase because it's so cheap. It starts at 45 mana. It's on a pretty low cooldown, 8 seconds, and scales down. Does pretty good damage. 85 damage at level 1 is a lot, and it scales all the way up to 225. And once again, does full damage to the backline. Also slows people by 30% non-decaying over 2 seconds. So it's a pretty good tool to help you get away from ganks or to help you get away from people that are chasing you. And if you do hit the enemy, then it does heal you for quite a bit over time. At level 2, it'll heal you for 60 plus 0.3, and then if you need to heal your ally with a W, then it increases the healing by a ton. So first of all, you don't deal yourself as much of your maximum health. You get 80% of that refunded, so that right there is a pretty big heal in a lot of situations. If you have 600 max health early in the game, normally it would cost you 60 health to cast your W, but if you hit the Q, then it's probably only going to cost you like 50. So really, it ends up being a lot of health that you save. But yeah, this just fits right in with that meta I was just talking about with Caitlyn or Ashe. You're just perma-poking them in, you're throwing star calls, pushing the wave, harassing them. If they harass you back, you're healing your ally. You can harass with silence if you want to. Now, that is a little bit more expensive and on a longer cooldown, so I wouldn't really do that unless they're super low. So you can go for the Airy Scorch combination now if you think you do have really heavy harass in the early game, or you can still go for the Guardian build, which I think is pretty strong. The advantages of the Guardian build, which is what I usually like to go are that you can go Font of Life, which makes, if you want to get Ardent Censer spread around a little bit better, you could actually probably go Demolish too if you have a Caitlyn or something and you think you're going to hard harass them. I haven't really tried that out, but I think that actually could work really well in the meta right now. And then you also can get either Conditioning or Second Wind if they have a poke comp as well. Second Wind can work really well. And then Revitalize, of course, is a must-have on Soraka. It's just so strong. And then that frees up your secondary tree so that you can take... I'll just pull this up because I have it all written out here as well. And you can click on these mini docs. If you go into my description on YouTube, I have a link to the big Google Doc, and then you can click on the little mini Google Docs, and this will show up for most of the top-end champions, which links you to the wiki, which is right here what I'm looking at. Just tells you all the stats on all of their abilities. Then I give it a 1 to 5, 1 being the champion is one of the worst at that task, 5 being the champion is one of the best. And then I have recommended runes and recommended items. So it's pretty good. And if I have a guide, I'll have it linked there. Some of the guides are a little bit older at this point, but unless the champion has been fully reworked, I think they're pretty relevant. So you can check out the guides if you want to know about that. But yeah, there's a couple different builds. So the Guardian build, you have the Font of Life. You can also take Demolish if you want to grab those plates early. Great with a Caitlyn, Ashe. A lot of the popular ADCs right now, Revitalize. And that frees you up to take Ghost Poro or Ulti Hunter. So I really like Ulti Hunter a lot because not only do you have a super high impact ult that's on a long cooldown, 160 seconds starting at 6 minutes, so you get a lot of value out of that percentage reduction because the base number is so high, but it's also so easy to get the stacks because you can influence cross map. So if you just ult and you contribute to a fight in the top lane, they get a kill on the top laner, you get a stack off of that Ulti Hunter. Which is going to reduce the cooldown even more. Then you can cast more ults and get even more stacks. So it's really easy to stack it up and get the full benefit out of Ulti Hunter a lot earlier in the game than many other champs because you're going to have access to potentially getting assists in the top lane, getting assists on jungle or mid lane, stuff that you may not be able to get with other laners as well. And then Ghost Poro is really nice and underrated, especially at lower elo brackets because people are less likely to sweep out your wards. And it does give you some extra early vision on things like Dragon before you can really get your warding item completed. You can throw that over there and it extends the time on your wards. Also in the mid game, once you do get your warding item, you can get some deep wards in the enemy jungle. They're going to stay up longer than usual. And once the Poro triggers on people and you get it fully stacked up, it's worth 30 AP, which is over 600 gold values. That's about 2 kills worth of value. Very strong. So I like that combination a lot. Like I said, you can go for the Airy. I may not go Nimbus Cloak anymore. I'll have to see. They did nerf it on this patch. If Nimbus Cloak is bad, then you can just go back to Mana Flow Band, which is okay. She doesn't need the mana that much, but it is helpful. And you can go for either Transcendence or Absolute Focus and then Scorch. So Airy plus Scorch adds a lot of extra damage during the laning phase if you're going to leverage that power, if you're going to push them in, force them to take bad backs, all that kind of stuff. That can be pretty good. And then you can go for the Ghost Poro Ulti Hunter package, or if you think you're going to be able to get some good Demolish procs while the plates are up, you can go for Demolish plus Revitalize. So I think there are a few different builds that can be strong. I recommend Boots of Swiftness most of the time. It's just really good for extra positioning. Your Q increases your movement speed by a percentage, so whenever you have a high base off of Swiftness, you get even more value out of that. So I really like Swiftness a lot. Relic Shield, they did buff Frostfang a while ago. They gave it a little bit of extra AP, a little bit extra mana regen. If you are going for that hard harass, the Airy plus Scorch build, maybe the extra mana regen is useful. But I still like Relic Shield because it's just guaranteed value. You're going to get your wards on time, 8 to 10 minutes. Doesn't matter if you're getting camped. Doesn't matter if your ADC is a turkey. Doesn't matter if you're dominating. You know, you're just guaranteed to get those wards. And that's really why I like Relic Shield. It also gives you a lot more survivability. And the name of the game of Soraka most of the time is just survive and you win fights. Like, it's almost impossible for your team to lose if you stay alive in these fights. And that's also why I like Guardian most of the time, is because Guardian protects you personally in a lot of situations versus Airy can never protect you. It only protects allies. And it's mostly used as a harassment tool in the early game. So that's why I tend to like Guardian a bit more, but both of them can be good. Then after that, you kind of feel it out. I think that Mikhail's is actually extremely good with the way the meta is shaping up right now. You're seeing a lot of Ashe, super common. Morgana is still pretty common. And this helps you out in a lot of your tougher matchups like Leona. If you're not the one getting hit by the Leona CC chain, you can Mikhail somebody else. And Soraka's in a really good position to leverage Mikhail's because she has so much healing. Her W's on such a low cooldown. It's 2 seconds later on in the game. Then, of course, you have your ult. So you get a lot of value out of the plus 20% healing and shielding. And then the extra health regen is relevant too because you will be damaging yourself some. You do get refunded on that off of your W more than you used to in the past, but there will be situations where you need to heal people and you haven't hit a Q and you don't have that active. What is it, Rory? You don't have a Q, it's not active. So the extra healing is relevant off of Mikhail's. What is it, Rory?
Dad, there's a bar right behind you.
Oh, you want a bar?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And it scales very well with Redemption as well, which is a super good item on her because if you drop Redemption and pop your ult, it's just an insane amount of burst healing in team fights that can be really strong. Good job, Roy. You want to go sit on your chair right there and eat it? So yeah, I think Mikhail's is a good option. If you are totally dominating the lane and you do want you want like an amp tome to help keep up the pressure, then you can still go Athene's, which is really strong on her too. So there are a lot of really good options on her. If your ADCs go into town, you can go Ardent. I don't get Ardent that much just because you're going to win fights if you get enough healing anyways. I'd rather have something that has a bit more defense on it. Mikhail's does have magic resist, Redemption has health on it, Athene's has magic resist, Ardent has no defense, but it is a very good offensive capability. So I just think this Soraka is really good. She's got the push, she has the global semi-pressure, she has reasonable defensive tools with the burst healing on herself, her Q for the movement speed, the self-healing, and she just scales super well. Matches up very good against other harassed champions in the early game because she does have that self-healing. A lot of these other top-end champs do not heal very well on defense early on, versus Soraka is going to be one of the best if you happen to be getting poked out. So good in a winning lane, reasonable in a losing lane. I think that's a good combination of the meta right now. Okay, next up I have Sona. Now, Sona is rising to prominence a bit more. She's a bit easier to play than Soraka. Soraka's not like super hard to play, but Sona is even easier. Virtually no skill shots, only on your ult, and just very, very good harassment. Sona is historically extremely strong in metas where you have things like Caitlyn, like Ashe, these harassment champs, just because her Q puts up really good harass. They can't dodge it. It's very long range. And it applies Airy and Scorch so well, and she works very well with those runes. So the Q, the mana cost is a bit higher than it used to be. How much? I know you get some refunded, but I don't remember how much whenever you touch an aura to someone.
Dad,
what is it, Rory? 30. Do you not have the big bow, Rory? So yeah, 45 cost as long as you're touching an ally with it early on. Can be very strong. Hang on, let me... You want Peppa Pig? Mm-hmm. Can be very strong. So really good with those harassment champs. Like I said, Caitlyn historically super good with that, and I think Caitlyn is the strongest ADC right now.
Oh, wait, hold on. I need the only Peppa Pig.
Okay, here you go. Can you go watch it on the chair over there? Okay, good job. And she scales really well. She's very good at team fights, kind of like Soraka. Now, her aura, I think ultimately, once you get enough CDR, once you hit like level 11, and this goes down to 6 seconds, and it's compounded with like 20% or 30% CDR, and if you're touching, I don't know what the exact number is, 3 or 4, so like maybe 3 allies, 2 or 3 allies plus yourself, this actually puts out more benefit than Soraka in terms of shielding plus healing combined. So that is really handy, and part of this is a shield. A big part of it is a shield. So if this is full blast and you hit, 3 allies with this, then you're getting a 375 shield with a 0.9 AP ratio. What'd you do, Rory? Okay, be careful. Remember, you don't press weird stuff, Rory. Okay, there you go. So that means that she does get around Grievous Wounds a little bit better. That is one thing, with Soraka, yes, they are going to get Grievous Wounds. They're going to get Executioners. They're going to get Morellos. Yes, that can be a little frustrating. Hey, Rory, can I see that real quick? Let me turn it down. It's a little loud, isn't it? Okay, there you go. Thank you. So she does get around Grievous Wounds a little bit better. She puts out way more damage than Soraka in team fights. Because not only does her Q do this damage, which is really good. I mean, when this gets maxed out, it's 320 damage with a 1.0 AP ratio. But she also spreads that out to allies. So once again, if you're hitting, you know, like 3 allies with this, and you're going to be, you know, posting up an extra like 0.6, 90 damage plus 0.6. So that's over 400 damage here with a 1.6 AP ratio. So very, very good contributions in team fights. She can rotate around the map fairly quickly with her E. You will go pretty fast if you try to do this by yourself without touching someone else. But if you do touch someone else, you can help them out in terms of that speed. And then she also has the ultimate, which is a really good, you know, just AoE team fight ability. So in situations where you're team fighting a lot, which is what's happening right now with the tanks top, the tanks in the jungle, and people just grouping up for more team fights, that's going to be very impactful. So she doesn't have the same global presence that Soraka does with the ult. She doesn't have as much burst healing and burst protection as Soraka. But in these longer fights, with the damage combined with the movement speed, combined with the AoE CC, she probably can be more impactful in clean 5v5 team fights than Soraka can be. She doesn't have as much health as Soraka, and she can't protect herself as much. She doesn't have... she does have the movement speed with her E, but it's harder for her to get the slow. Soraka's Q gives her movement speed and slows people down. So I think she's a bit more vulnerable, a bit more risky, but a bit stronger in the offensive arena than Soraka is. So you can do Airy, Nimbus Cloak, Absolute Focus, Scorch. I think you probably want this. You can go Guardian, but Airy and Scorch are just so powerful on her because it's guaranteed you're going to hit those Qs. With Soraka, they can dodge your Qs all day if they're really good, but they're not dodging Sona. It's guaranteed to happen, so you're getting really good value out of that. And then Conditioning and Revitalize. You could also do like Demolish and Revitalize, or Second Wind and Revitalize, whatever the situation calls for. Or you can do Presence of Mind and Cut Down. Cut Down does add extra harassment in the laning phase. Presence of Mind is going to give you some really big mana regen. Presence of Mind is really good if you want to do a tier build. I don't typically favor the tier build, although, to be honest, I haven't tried it a lot since they reworked her auras to be a higher base mana and then give a refund. The tier actually gives you more mana than it used to because it has that high base number that checks on the tier before the refund is applied, if that makes sense. So for instance, if you have something that's 100 mana and it's refunding 30 here, and tier is also going to refund I think 10% of it, then you're going to get refunded 10, then you're going to get refunded 30 off of that. So that's going to be a 40 refund. So I think you are getting quite a bit of value out of tier. And then if you also go like Lichbane, that'll give you even more value. So if you do want to do the tier into Archangels, into Lichbane, really offensive Sona build, I think Presence of Mind will be better. I'm not 100% sold on that. It kind of depends on just how much value you're going to get out of stuff like Ardent Sensor. If you have an AP bot laner or something that's just not going to do that well with Ardent, like an Ezreal or a Jhin or something like that that just doesn't like Ardent very much, maybe going for Lichbane could be a little bit better. I still like Athene's a lot on her, so I would get Athene's no matter what early on. And then after that, you know, you can kind of get a feel for it. If you don't think the Ardent's that important, maybe you could go Lichbane. Lichbane does work well with Athene's because you do put up more damage, which translates into more healing off of Athene's, but Mikhail's is also super strong on her. So anyways, lots of different build options. I think she is very strong. Great early pressure, great scaling. So I recommend Boots of Swiftness most of the time. Now, I do like Frostfang on her, once again, because it's guaranteed you're going to get those procs. Versus Soraka, people can dodge your Qs, and maybe it's not as guaranteed. So I still like Relic on Soraka. Then I would just probably go Athene's Ardent Redemption most of the time. Maybe you can mix in Mikhail's in there. Or if you want to go more aggressive, you can do Lichbane Archangels. The reason I don't like Lichbane Archangels is because they're 3,000 gold, which is about 50% more gold than Athene's or Ardent Redemption, that type of stuff, which means that you're going to be stronger, you know, like a 40-minute game with unlimited gold, but your power spike windows are going to be much, much weaker. And I feel like right now a lot of League is very tempo oriented, especially in the bot lane with the Ashe, the Jhin, the Caitlyn's. Like, you really want to take those towers and put up as much pressure as you possibly can in the early game, threaten the dragons, get the scuttles, start locking down their vision, rotate over to mid, clean that up, go get the second rift. I think there's a lot to be said for tempo right now, and those items just really don't come online until later in the game, especially like tier. So that's why I really prefer just getting stuff like Athene's, getting some damage, getting on the board, getting Ardent Sensor, just getting some aggressive items that are cheaper, that are going to give more immediate power, 5 or 10 minutes faster than some of those more expensive items. So that's my take on Sona. I know people have been successful with the Lichbane type of Sona, but that's what I think. Either way, I think she's very strong right now, and that is definitely supported. I mean, she has the highest win rate at 54% win rate last patch, which is very large. So I think she's really strong right now. Okay, Lulu's another one that has been coming up quite a bit lately. Now, Lulu does scale extremely well with a lot of the heavy auto attack reliant ADCs. So if you get something like a Twitch, a Jinx, even something like a Vayne, Kog'Maw, obviously, anything like that, Lulu's going to be really good because she's really the queen of steroids, if you want to think about that. Lulu's got the roids, she's got the goods, and you've got your Arnold Schwarzenegger Kog'Maw or whatever to go along with it. It's going to be really good. So what do I mean by that? I mean that she has a lot of modifiers that can increase the power of individual champions. So what she lacks in terms of team fight contributions, in terms of like Sona's auras and Soraka's ultimate and things like that, she makes up for in sort of single target buffs. So her Whimsy gives out 45% attack speed, and then also gives out 35%, usually at least 35% movement speed for a long duration. So that's a lot of extra effectiveness, but you have to couple that with picks, and a lot of people forget to calculate that when you're thinking about Lulu. When you put the shield on somebody, then it gives them this on-hit picks damage. So every time they attack around level 9 or so, it's going to do 80 extra damage per auto attack. So the faster they're auto attacking, the more damage they're doing. And 80 on-hit damage is worth like pretty close to 2,000 gold. So it's extremely effective. That's not exactly the same because it's not on-hit technically, it's on attack. But it's very, very strong. Trust me, it's really, really good. So anyone out there that's going to be getting, Hurricane, Blade of the Ruined King, a lot of these attack speed items, Lulu's going to be very good on them. She does have pretty good push early on with the Q, like for the first few levels. This does fall off pretty significantly because you don't put multiple points into it. But you can just, throw that Q. It's very cheap, just straight down the minion line as they walk in, and that can help Caitlyn or Ashe or whomever push, which can be pretty good. She's got a low cooldown shield early on, 8 seconds, pretty effective. So this doubles as damage and a shield, so that's really nice, kind of double duty. It's good against invisible things, like Twitch. I don't think it reveals stuff like Kha'Zix or Shaco. It might. I'm not 100%. And it might reveal Vayne when she's invisible too. So I can't remember that specific interaction. But stuff like Twitch, stuff that's camouflage, Twitch or Eve or something like that, then it can reveal those. Or if someone goes into a bush, that stops them from being able to play these little vision games with you. So pretty good overall. Also has this huge burst of healing, single target. 300 is a lot in the early game. And it gets around grievous wounds. So it's just a straight infusion of health. It's not a heal. So it's not reduced by Ignite, not reduced by Executioner's Calling or Morellonomicon. So that is really handy. However, it also does not scale with plus healing and shielding. So it doesn't scale with Ardent Sensor. It doesn't scale with Mikhail's. So it's kind of a double-edged sword. It's like the baseline is really powerful, great in the early game, but a bit weaker in the late game than something like a Soraka ult, which is going to scale very heavily with plus healing and shielding. Also has a pretty wimpy AP ratio, is only single target instead of multi-target. So very good if you have someone, particularly someone who attacks really fast, that can really leverage the Whimsy plus Pix combo, and you want to rush Ardent Sensor ASAP with Lulu because it does pair so well with Whimsy and Pix because you're giving out the extra attack speed and the extra on-hit damage. So very good, like I said, with things like Kog'Maw, Vayne, Jinx, if it's a good player. So I'll recommend, if you're on the fence, if you're not fully committed to Lulu, but you just kind of want to see if you should pick her or pick somebody else, just do a quick Professor, look at your ADC, just see if they're an ADC main, and see if you can get a sense of who they might pick. You know, if they're a Kog'Maw main, or if you're duoed with somebody, and you can trust them, you know they're going to be a solid ADC. I think she can be a good pick. She can be a little bit lackluster, though, in certain compositions. So with, like, Ezreal or Jhin, it's not that great because they don't really use the attack speed that much. What'd you say?
I want some water.
You want some water?
Mm-hmm.
Honey, are you around? I don't know what she's doing. Okay, hold on 1 second. I'll give you some water, okay? So, anyways, I think that she can be good. She is a little bit vulnerable to poke early on. She doesn't have a heal. She's very close range, so she's only 650 range on her E, so you are getting dangerously close to things like Caitlyn and Ashe to try to harass, which can be a big deal, versus Sona's Q range. I think is like 1,000 if you aren't going for the auto attack, if you're just going for the Q harass. And then Soraka can harass, I think, from 900 range away with her Q. So Lulu is very close range, so very dangerous against, you know, Leona, Nautilus, Blitzcrank, Caitlyn, Ashe. Like, there's a lot of popular stuff that's really dangerous out there to go into. So she does have very strong harass if you land the E plus Q combo, but that can be kind of dangerous. She doesn't have a heal, so she can get poked out early by a Soraka or a Sona. You know, if your ADC is a Turkey, you may not have as much team fight power as some other champs. She's still pretty good with things like Darius and stuff like that, where you want to run them in with Whimsy. Like, the movement speed's still really useful, but just a little bit more situational. So she can feel super OP, super oppressive if you have a really good champion that can leverage her offense, but she can also fall a little bit behind if you just don't have the right kind of comp to go with her. But she's still, I mean, she's not terrible. She's still pretty good any way you cut it. But that's just why I have her down a little bit lower, even though she does have the highest pick ban influence. She's banned a lot, she's picked a lot, and she has a pretty high win rate. Okay, let me check this water situation. I'll be back just 1 second. Did you get her some water, dear? Rory. Okay, I got you some water. Here you go. You want to watch some TV in there? Okay. And the big Poe, okay. You just got Poes everywhere, don't you? Okay, here you go. And the big Poe. Okay, sorry about that. Turn this off. Now she's watching TV in the other room. My wife is helping pack stuff up. As you can see, we're moving. Behind me is looking pretty barren, so sorry about that, but we will be in a new place here within a week or so. But anyways, obviously needed to get her some water. She can't get it herself, so. Okay, Janna. So I do think that Janna's pretty good. I'm trying her out a bit more. Her win rate has been creeping up a bit over time. She is a little bit more situational. She's a safer blind pick enchanter if you're afraid that they're going to play hard engage into you.
Hi, Dad. You need some help in there?
Hi, Rory. I'm okay. You can sit in here if you want to, though. You want to sit in here? Here, I've got your Poe right here. There you go. She asked me if I needed some help in here, and then she's gonna help out by sitting over there watching some TV, eating, drinking some water. Thanks, Rory. Thanks for your help. Helping lift our spirits, aren't you? Okay. But yeah, so I think she's a safer blind pick if you're like an early pick and you're afraid that they're gonna pick like a Nautilus or a Leona or something like that. I mean, people are still gonna play those champs. Like, yes, they have been nerfed out. Yes, their win rate's not as good, but they're still all over the place in pro. All of the, you know, all caps corporate tier lists are still gonna say that Leona and Nautilus are really good. So they're still gonna be there, right? And Janna's going to be one of the better champs into that just because she does have really good disengage with her Tornado and with her ultimate. And Janna is kind of one of the OG queens of YOLO Q, one of the old gangster, if you don't know what OG is. She's one of the old gangsters of solo queue. Because she moves around the map so quickly and she can respond safely to clowny situations, right? If your jungler's trying to dive the tower, your mid laner's trying to invade jungle with no vision, just random fights are breaking out everywhere. You can roll up, you're really fast, you have super high base movement speed because of your W. Very good with Boots of Swiftness. You can roll up, throw some shields, throw a Q in there to try to disrupt or to try to peel. If people are trying to run away from hot situations, you give them a lot of extra bonus movement speed when they're running towards you. So she's just really good at rotating and running around the map and just trying to put out fires constantly, which is most of what you're doing in solo queue a lot of the time. And she can also get really good vision because she can, more safely than most other enchanters, she can walk up, get that deep vision in the enemy jungle, and get out safely. Even if the Kayn, appears over a wall and chases her, she can probably still get away with Tornado, and she has her ult if she really needs it. So she's just one of the safer champs where you're running around, rotating, just constantly trying to keep people from making bad decisions. She also plays the split push game really well for similar reasons. So if you do have a Fiora on your team that's freshly buffed, or a Tryndamere, a Camille, anything that wants to split push in a side lane, you can get that vision, as I just talked about. You can rotate and help them. You can also hold down the mid lane. So if they can't fight your split laner one-on-one, sometimes the enemy team will try to hard engage on your team and force a 5v4, especially if it's like a Darius or something that doesn't have a teleport, that's just taking like Ghost Ignite or Ghost Flash. You can disengage that, right? You have the Tornado, you have your ultimate. So it's really hard for them to engage on your team as a countermeasure to a split pusher. So she just works really well with split pushers, really well with assassins, just really well when you don't want a team fight. And she's still pretty good in team fights too. She doesn't have quite the impact as Sona, or quite the impact as like Lulu buffing up single targets, but she can manage fights really well, especially if you have high threat long range champions, and if you have the higher scaling team. So if they have the Ezreal, you have the Kog'Maw, they're going to have a really hard time getting on that Kog'Maw because you have such great peel. So she's really good at defense, great at rotations, great at the Clown Fiesta, but really good at defense as well. So her offense is definitely lacking, but her defense is supreme, particularly against hard engaged champs. So I think that she is very good. She can comfortably get a Mikhail's as well. She does have 2 healing and shielding abilities. The fact that she does have a really big shield is also pretty nice because that does get around grievous wounds. And she gives out a lot of AD, so that makes her work really well with Assassin, AD Assassin type of champs. So like your Zeds, your Talons, Kianas, stuff like that, because she can basically give them a free BF sword. And people forget that about Janna. But you give a free BF sword to a hyper-fed, Assassin, or even things like a Kayn, that's going to be very valuable. So Lulu buffs up the attack speed of people, but Janna buffs up their raw AD. So in different situations, some of that stuff might be better. So I think that Janna is pretty good. Her biggest thing is that she's pretty weak in the early game. You can build her to compensate for that a little bit. You can take stuff like Comet, Scorch, Cheap Shot, and just like spam W on them. They did nerf the W a few patches ago, but it's still pretty good. This actually used to do 280 damage, believe it or not. I'm pretty sure her W used to. But she's still going to be weak because her shield's on a super long cooldown. It's 16 seconds in the early game, so you get hard punished for using that shield, and you have to get fairly close to spam your W on people, and you don't have a heal. So her matchup against things like Sona is pretty rough in the early game. Soraka can be a pest if you're landing a lot of Qs, but she does scale. She does have that safety. She does have some really good game against all-in champions. So I think that Janna's still going to be pretty strong right now. You probably want to run with the Airy Mana Flow, Transcendent, Scorch. Now, I've been trying out Magical Footwear and Biscuits, which I think are pretty good. Rory, be very careful. There's water here, okay? Oh, you want that bar? You're just eating all the bars today, aren't you? Okay, here you go. Rory, you sure you don't want to go in the other room and watch the mouse cookie on the TV with the big Poe? Want the TV with the big Poe in there? Mommy's in there. She likes hanging out with Daddy. You want to go watch it in there, Rory? You want a triple Poe? The small Poe plus the big Poe plus the TV in there? Mommy would love that. So yeah, I think that's pretty good. I can see you can go for the Guardian build with Revitalize too. If you think you're going to be in a hard losing lane, like if you early pick Janna and your ADC picks Vayne and they have, you know, Caitlyn plus Lux or something like that, then you can just kind of concede the lane and just go Guardian, just scale up with Revitalize Guardian, stuff like that. I think if you are going to lose lane, you don't want to do Scorch, and Aerie loses a lot of value, but either way, I think she's good. She's adaptable. She's just the most defensive of the group if you're afraid they're going to have a lot of hard engage. And then Rakan, I've got back in tier 1. He did get a really big buff this patch. We'll see how it works out statistically. For average Rakan players, it may not matter that much. I think if you are familiar with Rakan, though, this buff's going to be pretty huge. Rakan does offer... I don't know how that worked, but... Rakan does offer some really good engage to try to get on the Sona, to try to get on the Soraka, and take him down. He's very good at YOLO Q, rotating around, turning around situations, even better than Janna is. And the big thing is that he does have hard engage. A lot of these other enchanters, if you don't have engage, if you don't have a way to start a fight, especially if they outscale you, so if you're playing Janna and your ADC picks Ezreal and they have Lulu Kog'Maw or something like that, for example, it's going to be extremely hard to win that game if no one on your team has like really hard engage. But, you know, Rakan is just very versatile. You can peel, you can engage, you have pretty good scaling with your shield. Your shield is surprisingly strong. People forget this. I mean, you can do this twice, which is a 1.6 AP ratio and a 280 base shield. So that's a pretty massive shield. And you can distribute that to different people. So I think that is still really strong. And they did buff this up to end up being 75% extra movement speed. He gains an additional 100% bonus movement speed. So you can get this up to 175% bonus movement speed. So it's very, very fast. Good engage, good itemization. You can go for a little bit of a tankier build if you want to go for something like a Zeke's or a Knight's Vow. You can also go for Ardent Sensor. He's one of the few people that can double down on the extra auto attack damage, so you can go Zeke's plus Ardent Sensor to really help buff up your Caitlyn or your Vayne if they're really strong. He can go for Shirelia's very comfortably to help out your Darius or your Volibear. So he's just probably the most versatile itemization of anyone out there because he can buy some tanky or engage type of items, but he can also buy enchanter items depending on what's going on in the game. And he can engage, he can peel, he can be aggressive in lane, he can scale. So he's just kind of a jack of all trades. He's my go-to when I'm playing diamond games. Very strong. Now he is a little bit weaker against high mobility champions, so like Lucian, Vayne, Ezreal, stuff like that. You're pretty much never going to hit a W on him if they're competent in the laning phase. Caitlyn can be tricky with the traps. If it's a really good Caitlyn, she can net backward when you try to W into her, and the positioning of those traps can make it really difficult to sort of position around her to engage. So it kind of depends on how good the Caitlyn is, but Caitlyn's not an amazing matchup for Rakan, especially in the early game. But nevertheless, I still think he's going to be really strong right now. So yeah, you kind of feel out the situation. I think Guardian Font, flinching's really good. You can go Revitalize if you think that you're going to be getting a lot of plus healing and shielding. That can be pretty good. If they have a lot of CC, Unflinching's good. You can also go for Triumph plus the Tenacity rune if you want to, or Presence of Mind Tenacity if you need to do that. And then I like Ghost Poro and Ulti Hunter if you can get those stacked up. I think those are really good. I suppose you could make an argument for something like Cosmic Insight Biscuits if you want to, but you have a super high impact ult and he scales really well with AP, so I like Ghost Poro for the same reasons I was talking about earlier. Good extra vision early, good scaling later on with the AP. The mobility boots or Mercury treads. I think that swiftness boots, boots of swiftness are really good because you do want the movement speed in combat. It's not just about that initial engage, but it's about, you know, positioning around, getting as many different people charmed as possible. So that's why I like them over mobility boots. They're also 100 gold cheaper, which does add up. And then like Zeke, Shirelia's Ardent Sensor, very common items, very effective. We'll keep going because I don't want to be too long, but I do want to mention several different champs here. Okay, Blitzcrank I think is still going to be really good. He is one of the few clean answers to a lot of these enchanters. They can't really peel it, and you have such an abundance of damage that you're going to kill him anyways. Also, his ultimate does cleanse shields. It does like totally break them. So if you grab the Janna and she shields herself, or you grab somebody else and Janna shields the person that you grabbed, if you just ult, break the shield so you hook them, Janna shields them while they're on their way in. If you just go ahead and ult to break that shield and then knock them up, then I think that's a lot better than knocking them up first and then breaking the shield afterward, just to make sure you get full value out of that punch. But that is very, very nice in a lot of situations against a lot of these shielding champs. The Lulu, the Janna, even stuff like Set, Lux, just anything that gets really big shields, that Blitzcrank is a pretty nice counter to that. So I think he's good, but you do have to hit your hooks. If you don't hit your hooks, you will get bullied out. You will have a really bad time in lane. So he's very hit or miss. You have to be accurate with the hooks. But if you are, I think he can be really good. I feel like there has to be some kind of like AP build that might be viable on him. I don't see anyone do that. A lot of people just go for the tanky stuff. I guess that is better for peeling in team fights if for some reason you have to hang back and just try to absorb damage. That does allow you to run in as well and just like punch somebody to start a fight instead of having to hit the hook. So I guess maybe the tankiness matters. I've always wondered if like a GLP build or something would be decent, just so you can get the slow and hit the hooks from long range. That would also give you a bit more peel, a bit more utility. And if you went for the inspiration thing that works really well with GLP and Twin Shadows, I'm just wondering if that kind of build would be good. It's probably not, but that's always something that struck me, because he does have really good AP ratios. But you're probably better off just going for the Zeeks and the Knight's Vow. It's tanky, it gives extra stuff to your allies, so I could see that. It looks like pretty much no one does that build. Protobelt's interesting. But yeah, it looks like everybody just pretty much goes tank, which is fine. So yeah, Blitzcrank, pretty good answer. Yuumi, I have down here. Now, Yuumi did fall off a little bit more than I thought over the last couple of patches. The main reason this happened, she did get buffed last patch, if you're curious, is the rise of Caitlyn. Like, is the huge part of it. I did not think Caitlyn was going to be as strong as she is. They did give her some buffs. So I was like, okay, she'll be up a little bit, but she is extremely powerful in this patch. Look at this pick ban influence, 123. That is off the charts in terms of PBI. And what that means is, how often are they picked, how often are they banned, and then what's their win rate. So she has almost a 54% win rate. She's picked 29% of the time, which means that auto-filled people are basically picking her and still winning a lot, and she's banned all the time. She is insanely powerful right now, and that's very, very bad news for Yuumi for several reasons. Number one, it's very difficult to hop off and land your auto attack to get your mana back if Caitlyn's going to pound you in the face with like 3 auto attacks, or like potentially trap you as well. When you're coming up to her. So that range off of Caitlyn just makes it very difficult to auto-attack harass her. Also, when you're getting pushed in and you're getting poked and your allies getting poked, Yuumi is not good in that situation, because you're going to run out of mana really fast if you can't land those autos, and your heal is really inefficient in the early game because you need to get multiple points in queue so that you can harass, or you're just going to like go out of mana if you level up your E in the landing phase too much. So Yuumi is just really weak in the early game, and she gets punished hard by Caitlyn and Ashe as well. Ashe, similarly, if you go up and try to auto-attack her, she's going to hit you at least a couple of times with autos, and if she arrows you, you're dead. So there's pretty much no way you're ever hopping off of your ally against Ashe, because there's a huge probability you're going to die. And these champions are often paired together with other poke type of champions, you know, your Karmas, your Sonas, Lulu, stuff like that. So you're just extremely vulnerable to poke as Yuumi, and that was kind of the intended weakness, is they wanted to make her mana cost very high and make sure that you can't afford it if you're not landing those auto attacks with your passive. So I think she has a really hard time into these matchups. I still think she's pretty good into stuff like Vayne and Ezreal and some of these closer range champs early on, but she's having a real hard time into those sort of most popular matchups right now. She is still good later on if you have those tanks, if you have the Darius that's fed, if you have, you know, the Volibear that's fed. If you make it through the early game, she's very strong. So if you have a dominant position, if you have a Caitlyn on your team and, you know, they're playing Vayne they're playing something like Vayne plus Lux or something like that, then yeah, you can probably get away with Yuumi, and it's going to be pretty strong later on in the game. But there are other champs that scale super well too, right? Like all those other enchanters up there, the Soraka, the Sona, the Lulu, all of them scale really well as well. And if you position correctly, you can be relatively safe. Yuumi is supremely safe, especially when she's on a tank later in the game, but that can be problematic. Also, assassins are still kind of your go-to picks in mid lane. Everything's an assassin for the most part. It's like assassins plus Galio. And you are seeing some assassins out of the jungle. You're seeing Kha'Zix has been very strong, and even things that aren't necessarily technically an assassin like Nunu is still going to be able to run you down with a snowball and catch you if you're playing Yuumi. So it's just very difficult to get down proper warding because you're so slow, and if you get CC'd then you're going to die. So it's hard to get proper vision. It's hard to rotate to go help out other lanes in sort of the YOLO queue environment. So I think that definitely has put a number on her. So she's very strong in organized play where you have someone that's helping you ward, where you have other people that are also rotating, where you can hitch a ride in specific comps where you're going to have a high-powered tank you can attach to later and you're going to be able to survive the laning phase. Like all of these ifs, she can be really good, but many of these things have turned against you recently. Most notably, like I said, the super high-pressure early games based around Caitlyn and Ashe with another poke support are just really difficult for Yuumi to deal with in the early game. Okay. Karma is getting a couple of nerfs on this patch. Now, Karma, that might be in anticipation of kind of the Caitlyn Ashe meta because she is very, very good. She's the supreme sort of push and poke early game support. She can hit that backline with her Q. She does basically have an ultimate at level 1 with empowered Q. Is going to knock off like 50% of someone's health. So she does a lot of damage in the early game. Really good at team fighting later on with her R plus E. So she has a lot of things going for her. She doesn't have any steroids in her kit, unlike Janna and Lulu. She doesn't buff people up with the steroids, and she doesn't have the same like just raw healing output as Soraka or the global presence of Soraka. But she does have that early game push. That's really her claim to fame. Now, they have nerfed that a couple of times on this patch, though. The Q is 2 seconds longer, which is pretty significant. You're still going to be able to Q, obviously, once per wave, Q that backline, and probably Q once more. But I think they increased the mana cost on her Q at early levels by 15, which is quite significant. So before your first back, you probably will run out of mana early. You might be able to take something like Mana Flow Band and have that help you out. So I'm not really sure. Maybe you take Frostfang instead of Relic, and that can help you out a little bit early game. Obviously, after your first back, you're probably okay. You can get 2 or 3 Fairy Charms if you need to, depending on your timing, to get that mana back. You can probably even safely get like an Amp Tome plus 2 Fairy Charms and still like not even deviate from your Athene's Rush. So she might be okay. We'll have to see. So I don't think she's going to be terrible. It's possible she's can be tier 1 just because she is so extremely good with Caitlyn and Ashe and any kind of poke lane bottom. And because they are nerfing out Nautilus even more, who's one of her major adversaries. So we'll see. But that one's kind of a question mark because those 2 hits to her Q are pretty significant. But especially against other champs that don't have a heal like a Lulu or a Janna, she can be very, very good early game if you have the ADC pressure to help support you. Okay, Leona's another one who is still pretty popular. She's just super snowball reliant, and very wave dependent as well. You have to have an ADC that's going to freeze it in the middle where you can get a proper runway for your engage. If you can do that and you get a proper engage on someone like a Sona or a Soraka, it is very easy pickings. So if you do have something like a Jhin who can put out a ton of damage early with a Leona and you can pressure them off, it's great. But if you're pushing them in a tower with stuff like a Caitlyn, it makes it very difficult to engage when they're under tower until you start to get more armor or a stopwatch or just something else to help you out with the tower dives. So very good with diving if your jungler comes down and will help you out with dives. So in like organized play, she can be really strong. But it just YOLO Q where your ADC is just pushing it into their tower over and over and over again. Your jungler's not setting up for any dives or whatever. She can be very vulnerable because she can't engage into that, and you can potentially get ganked. And if you get ganked, it's going to be really bad because you have no escapes and you have limited ways to peel your ADC. So, very good on offense. Extremely good on offense. Like, huge chain CC, still respectable damage, even though it's been nerfed a bit. Very, very tanky in the early game because of her W, especially against, like, minion auto attacks, against runes, things like Scorch, Airy, just auto attacks. She's very, very good because her W reduces the amount of damage that she takes by a flat amount. So I think she's the tankiest of the hard engaged champs in the early game, or certainly one of them. And then her ultimate also is on a really low cooldown. It's 90 seconds base, which is huge, and it has a really long range, and it's pretty much guaranteed to hit unless they flash, or if they have a dash or something, they can dash out of it. But very accurate, really long range engage, low cooldown. So she does snowball super well. You know, with something like a Tristana, she could be pretty good if you get the right situations there. Now, on the flip side, if you just get a lot of pressure and you go rotate and do something with that pressure, she can still be good. So if you have like a Tristana or something and you just push them into the wave hardcore, and then you go contest all of the scuttles, you go for an early dragon, you invade the enemy jungle at their second blue spawn, you go rotate middle and make plays. So you definitely can do a lot of stuff with that pressure. But it just requires a bit more coordination, and you're not going to be as strong in the current environment by default. Let's put it that way, right? You have to be active. You have to have a team that's going to help cooperate, either help you position the wave where it needs to be aggressive in lane, or willing to help you rotate, get that vision, and make plays. So in higher elo brackets, I still think she can be pretty good. I think she'll continue to be kind of middling in lower elo brackets in a lot of games, although she can feel very oppressive and very OP if she gets ahead. And with something like a Tristana that can also be very oppressive, or something like a Draven, she's still going to be pretty good. Now, Nautilus did get nerfed on this patch, and he's been super popular in Pro. They had to dial him back a little bit because he was one of the highest win rate, highest presence Pro supports. But I think this might be a little too much. Like, he still has a lot of very, like, guaranteed CC. Like, that ultimate can knock up multiple people and be very strong. But his early game, and he can hook people and chain CC people early, but he's really squishy now with that nerf to his shield. Typically, you don't get any more points in that shield after the early game, so he's going to be really vulnerable with that. He doesn't have any healing or shielding. So, and his damage is a little bit lower than it used to be too, so he's still pretty good, but kind of like Leona, you need that positioning. You need the wave to be in the middle of the lane so that you can engage properly, or you're just not going to be able to do anything, right? So if you're getting pushed in, right, by, their Caitlyn plus, whatever range support they have, that can be a problem. But also, if your ADC's pushing them in, that can be a problem. So you need some very specific conditions that aren't happening right now in lane. And it's a bit tougher as Nautilus than Leona, because Leona can at least engage through the wave. So if they're trying to push into you and you see a really good opportunity, like the Yuumi trying to go up and auto attack you to get mana, you can engage through the wave and kill her. Versus Nautilus, you have to have a clear shot. You can't engage through the minions. That means you have to position around on the side, which can be riskier. So he's still okay. I think you can still make him work, but I think that he is going to get outscaled. And it's just really difficult in kind of this push-poke meta that we're in right now in the bot lane to make him work. Although, once again, as with both of them, if you get a clean hook, on the Soraka, on the Sona, stuff like that, that can definitely work right now. It's just harder to do it when you have stuff like Ashe slowing you, Caitlyn disrupting your pathing with traps, all these minions in your way because you're getting pushed in. It just feels like it's a lot harder to make that happen. Rory, be very careful up there, okay? Can you sit down for me, please?
Yeah.
Where do you want to go? You want to go in the house? Okay, how about this? I'll move it, and then you go down there and you can open it up from the floor, okay? There you go.
Can I go in my house?
Yeah, you're going to go in your house. Cool. And then finally, rounding out, I don't want this to take too much longer. We just have Bard, Morg, Senna, Nami, and Zyra. Bard did get nerfed on this patch. He can still be pretty good if you're good on him. His win rate was pretty high last patch. Honestly, I'm not really sure why. I don't see him in a ton of games, and he just doesn't feel like that impactful, but he has been. I mean, he's been doing really well, especially in Pro with the early pressure. So, I don't know. Maybe he's a lot better than I think he is. Just to me... To me, he just feels very conditional. Okay. Okay. There you go. Good job, Ray. To me, he just feels very conditional, but if you're really good on him, if you're a one-trick bard, I think that he can be really strong. Morgana is pretty good with Caitlyn right now, which is why she's getting played in Pro. Caitlyn and Ashe are both very good. If you land that bind and you chain the CC together, either with a trap or an arrow or whatever, it's really good. And she's kind of a substitute in Pro for Tahm Kench against things like Ashe Arrow. You've got the Black Shield for that. Black Shield's obviously very good against Leona and Nautilus, who are both very popular in Pro. So I can definitely see it. And she's pretty good in the push poke meta. Maybe she deserves to be like tier 2, maybe even tier 1, who knows. We'll have to see. My problem with Morgana is that she has really long cooldowns. They did nerf the cooldown on her Q by a little bit.
Like a volcano.
It is like a volcano, yeah. So, yeah, I think that, the chain CC and you can push the backline with your W comfortably. You do have the Black Shield to help you out. That Black Shield's very good with assassins like Katarina and stuff like that too. So if they have fairly low damage, especially kind of low magic damage, and they're not going to be able to break your shield easily, and they're relying heavily on CC, I think that Morgana can be a pretty good pick right now. She is pretty brutal. Like, if you get the Morgana Q into Caitlyn trap, that's lights out, they're dead most of the time. So, and you're going to have a lot of chances to throw free Qs. When you're pushing them into tower and you miss a Q, it's hard for them to do anything to punish you for that because they're going to have so many minions in front of them. And, they're just not going to be able to respond as easily a lot of times. So I think that can be good. Rory, honey, can you stop messing around with that, please? Daddy's trying to make a video, okay? Are you okay? She tried to climb over the box and I don't know, probably tried to bump herself between her legs or whatever, trying to climb over that. She got stuck.
Oh my goodness.
So, anyways, I think that she can be a pretty good combo there. Sona's another one.
I want to keep that.
So anyway, Senna, I think Senna can be good. She just feels like she's very all-in to me.
Okay, get in the box though, okay?
Rory, you can play in the box if you turn it down, but don't climb in it like that, okay? You want to climb in it like this? That's fine. Okay, or you can sit there. Don't climb in it when it's up there like that, Rory, okay? You're going to hurt yourself doing that. So, like, she can work, and I know I've debated, endlessly on stream with people about the grass build versus the glacial augment build. I like glacial augment a lot more. It's about 50-50 between pros. Glacial allows you to have a much cheaper, much more efficient build. You can go Umbral early on, get you really good vision control, more damage, and then you can get more utility items later on. You can get Ghost Blade for better rotations, better positioning in fights, or you can get something like Edge of Night to protect you against hook champions like Blitzcrank, like Nautilus, which is very powerful. So she does offer a lot of poke, very good with Caitlyn, very good with Ashe. She can pressure towers really easily. If you do want to go for the grass build, which is the other really popular one, it does provide you extra healing, extra push, extra damage. You can take Demolish. I think you can take Demolish secondary anyways if you want to with the glacial build. But my whole thing with that build is you have to buy a the hammer or whatever, the ice hammer, which I'm blanking out on the name right now, but it's such a weak item in my opinion. It does give you a lot of health, but you're still going to get blown up in most team fights. I just, because you don't have the resistances to go with it, you don't have the armor, you don't have the magic resist, your shielding is pretty lackluster. So that build I feel like is really good in the early game, but unless you get really far ahead, I feel like there's going to be a point in the mid game where it's just a bit weaker because your items are more expensive, because you're buying stuff like the ice hammer and then you're trying to buy black cleaver and all that. It's the same thing that I talked about with Sona earlier, is you're buying 3,000 gold items when you could be buying much cheaper items, and you could have a better power spike to contest Scuttle, contest Dragon, all that stuff earlier on in the game, and just really keep the pressure up, which I think is what you want to do with a high-tempo champ like Sona, who's going to get outscaled anyways by enchanters. I want the cheaper items. I want to be able to keep up with them. I want to be able to keep pressing my advantage. So that's why I'm not a Sona expert, but that's why I would personally go for the Glacial Augment build with lethality, particularly because of the vision control of Umbral. I cannot overstate just how strong that is. You basically get a second sweeper for free, which makes it much more difficult for the enemy to contest you on objectives and gives you many more opportunities to get picks and keep pressure up, particularly, once you're trying to get an objective or when you're trying to rotate and stuff like that. So I just like that build a lot more. But, I mean, both of them can work. It just depends on, just how much you're going to be able to pressure and how much of an advantage you're going to get. So I think that maybe the grass build is going to be better and, like, much higher elo, where you can 100% guarantee that your ADC is going to be aggressive and you're going to get a lot of value out of it in the laning phase. But if you're not sure if your ADC is really passive and you're not getting a lot of grasp stacks, you're not really leveraging that early game harassment potential with that build with Senna, then it's going to be really hard because you're going to fall so far behind. You're just not going to have any gold. Versus with Glacial Augment, if your ADC is a turkey, they're not pressuring with you, at least you have a cheap item you can fall back on. You have that vision control. You can play around your mid lane. You can give them your control ward. You can sweep for them with your Umbral, with your normal sweeper. I just feel like you have a lot more options to help your team out with those cheaper items. You just have a lot more versatility. So it's like in the best case scenario where you're playing super well, your ADC's playing super well, grasp, and the enemy's like cooperating, they're not camping you all game. I think that the grasp is better, but just in the YOLO queue situation, if you're platinum and lower, you're not sure how your ADC is going to do, you're not sure if the enemy jungler is going to camp you or if your jungler is going to help out, then I feel like the Glacial Augment build is just going to be a bit more versatile. Nami's another one who's kind of been forgotten. She did get her movement speed on her passive nerfed really hard a few patches ago, and I just feel like she gets outscaled by a lot of other champs. She is pretty good at the push and poke. I just think that Sona's a bit better at that style right now. But maybe, who knows, maybe it could work. And then Zyra's the final one. You would think Zyra would be very good right now. Like, she historically has been good with push poke, things like Ashe, Ashe has been like the greatest ADC with Zyra right now, and then Caitlyn also has been pretty good, but it's just her cooldowns are so long. That's the biggest thing, is like those seeds are like 16 to 18 seconds early level. They don't increase the damage on your plants at all. You don't get CDR with them. You don't get any benefit out of just getting a couple more plants, and you really need those to be able to harass people. So you have to choose, do you want lower cooldown on your plants, or do you want more damage by getting more points in your queue? And a lot of other, modern day supports just don't have to make that choice. So it's not that she's terrible. She's got a decent win rate. Also, the plants under tower aren't that good. They just get one shot, basically, so they might get off one or two auto attacks under tower. And her items are just really expensive as well. So she is very good at push and poke style of play, but just the fact that she has such terrible cooldown management is weak. I really wish they would give her seeds up to the 20% CDR that they used to give, or at least 10%. But they've gotten rid of it. A few of the off-meta picks that I've mentioned, and then we'll go ahead and wrap this up. I think that I still haven't tried Nunu support. I feel like there might be some situations where it could be good against melee champs, because you do have the snowball to help disengage. You obviously have your E, you have your Q to help out versus harassment. You can obviously contest scuttles and stuff. You can rotate really well with your snowball. You can gank your own lane with your snowball. So I think that there's potential there, but probably not. Skarner, no. I mean, these are like really off meta. Just if people are asking about them, maybe they're good. Like maybe Gragas, against hard engage, but the hard engage is just not happening. Now Ziggs is one on this patch that would be interesting, I think. He did get a couple of buffs to his passive. Are you singing along, Rory? He did get a couple of buffs to his passive, so his mana regen is not amazing. His mana costs are pretty low, though. They're like 50. So I'm just thinking, like, if you pair him together with something like a Caitlyn or an Ashe, and you just keep hard pushing him, it's about the same as Karma's push. You just, like, queue that back line of minions, And then just every now and then you can auto attack. Doesn't he have long attack range? It's only 550. I thought he had 575. Does he get extra range off of this? But the short fuse actually does pretty good damage. They increase the damage on this now, so you do get a pretty decent chunk. So like level 3, you'd get an extra 28 damage plus 0.5. So it's okay, but I'm just thinking, like, if you really want to go hard on taking the towers, if you're just like, I'm playing Caitlyn, we're just going to slam these towers, right? You can take Demolish with Ziggs as a secondary, like Demolish plus Second Wind or something to deal with their harassment. And then, of course, you know, your main one, you'd probably end up going, like, Comet, I'd say, like, probably, like, Comet, Mana Flow Band, Transcendent Scorch or something like that, and just go for like just early game, just hard push and take those towers. I think did they buff his satchel charge? I can't remember, but anyways, you could kill this with basically like a plate and a half left. And this does an extra, I think, 150% to structures. I don't know if this has been updated. I feel like maybe not, but either way, if you want to go hard on the push poke and you want someone that's just going to massacre those towers, I think that Ziggs can be pretty good. He is going to be really vulnerable to ganks. He doesn't provide any plus healing and shielding. He does have really good team fighting, in theory, like with his Hexplosive, Minefield, does pretty decent bonus damage. I mean, it can do up to, 900 damage early on in the Mega Inferno Bomb. So he's a very good sort of just like hard push poke plus zone control type of champ. So I don't know. I mean, maybe there's a universe where he could be pretty good, but it's mostly just if you're Ashe or Caitlyn and you really want to make sure you get that first tower and you're just like hard rotating, he could be interesting. So that would be his advantage over other early poke champions like Sona or Lux or Xerath or Vel'Koz or whatever, would be that he can actually like plow those towers. So I don't know, and I guess it would be probably max Q then W. I don't know if maxing W is worth. I mean, being able to knock out a tower at 35% of its max health is pretty big. The difference between 25 and 35% is big, and that doesn't care about armor on plating. Remember that. It's an execution. So it doesn't care about shields on it, doesn't care about armor, any of that stuff. It just straight takes it out. So, I mean, with Ziggs, you could realistically, if it's Caitlyn, you get you probably get 2 Demolish procs off of this. So you get 1 proc, you push in really fast, you get a proc at level 3, 45 seconds later with Caitlyn, you get another proc. You're probably getting pretty close to execute range, because you're probably going to get, a plate and a half, maybe 2 plates off of just Demolish procs, and then just naturally doing damage to the tower with your passive, with Caitlyn auto-attacking the tower. You can probably knock maybe 1 more plate off, and then you're getting pretty close to execute range. So, I mean, I think you could, start taking towers really quickly with this comp, potentially. But anyways, that's going to be it. Hope you enjoyed it. Be sure to like and subscribe if you did, and I'll see you next time. Have a good day.